Welcome to Faith Exclusive Episode 9, where we discuss topics that challenge you and assist in finding the solutions for a better outcome and a way forward. I'm your host, Faith. In Episode 8, we discussed resilience. In this episode, we are discussing the enabler. Our disclaimer is a reminder that this podcast should not be taken as legal counseling or advice. Information on this podcast is for inspiration, and we cannot be held liable for information included in this podcast. Do not rely solely on the information shared. If you do, we will not be held liable for such reliance. This podcast isn't a substitute for professional advice. We are not a professional. The content is opinionated and the terms of use are to the best of our knowledge. We also reserve the right to change the management of this podcast. Let's get started. Welcome to a new episode of the Faith Exclusive podcast. This topic is so important and it affects every aspect of life. We must discuss the enabler and how it can impact the lives of others. An article on the Healthline website says the following about the enabler, and I quote, "The term enabler generally describes someone whose behavior allows a loved one to continue self-destructive patterns of behavior," unquote. I go on to state that it's usually seen in addictive behaviors, but psychologists are finding that close relationships that support harmful or problematic behavior enable continued behavior. You may ask how one enables or supports unacceptable behavior. Through means that allow certain behaviors to function without accountability and consequences. Making excuses, explaining away the behavior, avoiding the root cause, and addressing the receiver of this behavior while ignoring the behavior. If you're joining, welcome to Episode 9, where we discuss the enabler. Who can be an enabler? Usually, partners in romantic relationships, parent-child relationships, close friends, and colleagues find themselves being enablers of unhealthy behaviors. For some reason, it's easier to enable than to hold accountable. It's not always intentional or out of spite, and most of the time it's not realized. The enablers find themselves taking responsibility and compensating for the behavior rather than addressing it for the best outcome. They mean well, and it's usually out of commitment or loyalty to the relationship, even if they do not agree. Codependent relationships usually have a higher level of enabling by taking on the responsibility through compensation due to the deficiency. If you're joining, welcome to Episode 9, where we discuss the enabler. How do you know if you're an enabler in destructive behaviors? Ask yourself the following questions. Do I make excuses for the behavior? Do I ignore the behavior and address the reactions of the receiver? Do I cover up for the behavior even though I know it's wrong? Do I shift the blame on the receiver or others? Have I become the voice of the sender to the receiver? By being an enabler, do you know that it hinders the healing, growth, and opportunity for real change to take place? You are disrupting the healthy boundaries necessary. If you're joining, welcome to Episode 9, where we discuss the enabler. Some of the dangers in enablement are self-harm as well as harm to others. The prolonged damage to mental health for the receiver as well as the initiator of the behavior. Unwarranted legal issues. Deferred recovery from damages that the behavior caused, as well as others becoming a recipient. Emotional stress, shame, guilt, and humiliation for all parties. Being an enabler is healthy for anyone and only causes more harm than good. Being a human bandage for what needs airing and addressing prevents healing and a healthier way of life. It causes strained relationships that could have been prevented by truth, honesty, and accountability. It's learned dependency that turns into codependency, which is another issue. It causes a lack of emotional intelligence, growth opportunities, and stagnation. The time and years given away to unproductive self-defeating behavior that doesn't yield a positive return for anyone. If you're joining, welcome to Episode 9, where we discuss the enabler. The goal is not to bash or shame, but to enlighten for the sole purpose of change. To bring awareness for a healthier way of life for all. It allows healthier conversations, growth, impact, and empowerment to take place. It makes room for better performance. It brings balance to a healthy life. The well-being of every individual is important, and every life is worth liberty. Knowledge is power, and looking inward allows the discovery of untapped potential. That brings us to the end of this episode. We appreciate you during our discussion regarding the enabler. We hope this ignited something in you that provoked your curiosity. As always, we welcome you back and appreciate your listening ear here on Faith Exclusive Podcast. Please subscribe, like, and share.